We have 6 brands at Barker. We have a lot of different business lines and people who have like a lot of different objectives. One team is like, our business needs its own TikTok. Nope, we are doing one TikTok because we don't have the bandwidth to do 7. So it's a little bit, and then sometimes like the world, it just becomes overwhelming. You need to be, the world screaming at you. I think ChatGPT, the images and the video will be next. There's so much coverage about this. I don't want to make predictions, but it is going to change how we do things.
Welcome to How I Made It in Marketing from Marketing Sherpa. We scour pitches from hundreds of creative leaders and uncover specific examples. Not just trending ideas or buzzword-laden schmaltz. Real-world examples to help you transform yourself as a marketer. Now, here's your host, the Senior Director of Content and Marketing at Marketing Sherpa, Daniel Burstein, to tell you about today's guest.
We used to publish benchmark data, and every year, marketers had the same top challenge. B2B marketers, B2C marketers, email marketers, social media marketers, always the same. Not enough budget. I'm sure you're facing the same challenge right now, aren't you? Hey, I am too. However, true creativity sees an obstacle as an opportunity. And as we've talked about before on How I Made It in Marketing, sometimes a giant budget leads to squishy thinking and really just a giant mess. It takes limitations and boundaries to focus our thinking and sharpen our focus. I was reminded of that truism when I read this lesson from our latest guest. You don't need a Super Bowl ad to make a huge impact on social media around the Super Bowl. We'll discuss the story behind that lesson, along with many more lesson-filled stories with Stacey Grissom, the Director of Content and Communications at Bark, the maker of BarkBox. Thanks for joining me, Stacey.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's take a quick look at your background. You started your career as a production assistant at Tribune Broadcasting and an intern on CBS Sunday Morning. You had a couple of other early career roles, but for the past 11 years, you've worked at Bark, where you were employee number 3, and now there are over 600 employees, and now you are Director of Content and Communications at Bark. Bark has grown from 2,000 subscribers to over 2 million during Grissom's tenure, and over the last decade, she has hired 40 writers, comedians, and content creators. Bark is best known as the maker of BarkBox. It's a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, and in its most recent full-year results, the company earned $507.4 million in revenue, a 34% increase year over year. So huge growth in your career there. We're going to dive into all the lessons we can learn. But first, give us an idea. What's your day like as Director of Content and Communications at Bark?
So every day is different when, working with the dogs. First off, spend a lot of time petting the dogs and giving belly scratches at Bark. But yes, sometimes we're launching a new product. Sometimes we're launching a contest. Sometimes we're planning events. We've opened a dog park in Nashville, planning photo shoots. Or just working on the day-to-day content and, putting the food on the food on the table, so to say. So it's a lot with content. It's a lot of cross-functional work and, working with the growth marketing team or the ad creative team. Lots of different things every day.
All right, well, let's see if we can unpack some lessons from your careers. You shared with us so much. The first one I want to jump into first lesson from the things you made in your career. A viral moment can tie into a PR sprint. So how'd you learn this lesson, Stacey?
Yeah, so I think there have been a lot of different things that we've done over the years. I think the first time that this happened, so I started in 2012, and this is when BuzzFeed, the internet is still a good place and social media is going to save us all. And BuzzFeed was the coolest thing on the internet. And on day one, when I started at Bark in our little windowless room in Chinatown, they said here's your job. You are responsible for all the content, and you are also doing all the customer service. And I was like, I knew that there was going to be a catch when they said that my job was going to be all about dogs. But so for the first few years, I was building up a content property called Bark Post. And we ended up getting it up to 15 million unique visitors per month. And we were producing video content and all that stuff. But one of the things that we did was we were constantly telling stories about dogs, and we found this one story of this dog, Brittany, who is a golden retriever, and she was the last living search and rescue dog from 9/11. And we were like, what could we do with this dog? Obviously that story has so many, that story has such an arc and so much stakes to it. So we decided to make a little video about her, and we said we were going to call it Dog's Best Day. And we flew out Brittany and her mom and handler to New York. We threw her a sweet 16th birthday party. We gave her a key to a dog park on Hudson River. And it was just like a really cute little video. Well, we released that around 9/11 in 2015, and it exploded. The video got millions of views, and the coolest thing was it got picked up on the NBC Nightly News. And that was like the first, I'd had like many moments of like, the internet is a game, content marketing is like such a fun game. You can like crash the company website and that's awesome. But like, that was the first time where I was like, you can take something that doesn't take that much money and get it in the national spotlight. And so that was one of the first times that we did that. And I think like, yeah.
Well,
I don't want to ramble. Sorry.
No, let me ask the problem because you say it's a game, and I get what you're talking about, right? That's kind of the cool thing about digital marketing. It's, I mean, almost like a casino. You can see some instant results. But what about a craft? Because I wonder if you can kind of get into that just idea of launching Bark Post. Because I was looking at some of your stuff, and it's high quality. I mean, it is an editorial, publication, broadcaster quality stuff, in my opinion. And when I see so much content marketing, a lot of times it's like, okay, freelancer plus keywords equals leads. You know what I mean? And there's just such a focus on what can I get? And I published an article recently as like, think of your lead gen as a product. Like put as much focus into your lead gen efforts as you would a product. It's not just a means to an end. It has to be a means. And so give us maybe some background about how you got, you're employee number 3. I imagine you were instrumental in this. How did you get Bark Post launched? Because like I said, that's high quality. That's good quality content there. Obviously, there's a means to an end. You're promoting Bark. It's not hidden, but that's high quality content.
Yeah. I mean, so I think like my boss from the beginning, Henrik, well, first off, like I was like 24 years old when I was like doing this. So it was like, I still look back and I'm like, they gave all that stuff to a kid. And so I'm like still a little confused on that, but I don't know. I was very excited, had a lot of energy. But we did do a lot of stuff with freelance stuff. We had no budget to do that. And like the Dog's Best Day example was like, they were like, okay, you guys can have like a few $1,000s. And then like the team that we had there, we were like, well, we only get like this thousands of dollars never. So we have to like stay up all night and make it as good as we humanly possibly can make it. So it's in part like that. And then also like, having a boss that has like very exacting standards, while also saying like, it was the like era of like Mark Zuckerberg's like move fast, break things. And that kind of worked for us. 'Cause, we were just, very confident and very, fiscally constrained, and sometimes that can work. And I think like part of it is like dogs are like this universal topic where like most people in America, there's not that much that we have in common in the US, but I think dogs are one of the largest like through lines where like doesn't matter like where you're from, what your politics are, like most of us agree like dogs are pretty awesome.
I think that's your next campaign during the presidential election. That would be a pretty good one,
Yeah.
No, and to be clear, I did not mean to slam freelancers. Freelancers listen to our podcast. I love freelancers. It's great to use them. But no, the idea of, sometimes I see we're going to find a writer on Upwork, and we're going to give them 5 keywords, and we're going to give them a form for, a lead gen form. And this is our content marketing campaign, where it seems like, as you said, I mean, you took it pretty seriously. We just have these few $1,000s. Let's make something really special and awesome and important. And so to me, I think, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, it wasn't just means to an end. You were crafting something in the actual content you were making.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you can't, I think like my general philosophy on content, like you can't phone this stuff in. Like you have to like work your, I'm allowed to say ass off to, to make people care. And like, you can't, just like the keyword content, like I've done all of that SEO content that is like phoned in, but the things that really resonate like on a human level are the things where you're like telling deeper stories, or you're actually creating something that people can use, or it educates them, or it tells them like a really entertaining story, or it tells them like a story that like really hits them in like emotional like elements of them. I think another time when we were like, this was like a little bit later, but we did this thing that we now call the Dog Mom Rap. And it was a couple writers on the team. I didn't even originally propose it, but it was like two of the comedy writers on my team. They were like, Stacey, we gotta like make this song. And I was like, okay, well, like let's write it, and then we can like pitch it to the people that give us our little bits of money. And we just like worked really hard on it and like pitched it with a lot of energy. And, you know, Henrik was like, okay, you can do this. Like, here's like $3,000. So we like wrote, produced, and like shot this Dog Mom Rap, and it ended up getting like 70 million views. It was the like top performing piece of brand content for the month of May for like 2 years in a row. And you know, so it's just like stuff like that where like sometimes if you put your like whole dang heart into something, it can work.
Yeah, I mean, I've written before, like, the world doesn't need another blog post. Like, if you think you're going to make a viral YouTube video, look at YouTube. There's no shortage of videos. Like, if you're going to make it, have a purpose for it and have some value in the world. But I'm glad you mentioned the comedy writers, because I was going to ask you, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, you've hired 40 writers, comedians, and content creators. Obviously, everyone hires writers and content creators. I think you're the first guest that has mentioned hiring comedians. So can you give us, like, some insight into... That was one example of how you use them, but your idea behind like putting them to work, and also like how do you find and hire good comedians?
Well, the finding and hiring good comedians, one, like it definitely helped being in New York City, where, you know, everybody's doing stand up on the side, and everybody's like, just like, I think there's like, comedians are like these. You don't do comedy unless you're like a little bit of a tortured soul and you're like processing a lot of things. But the thing with comedy is like, you are editing and editing and editing yourself. And when you're doing stand up, like you have to have a lot of guts, and you're constantly like getting as succinct and direct and clear as possible. So I think like comedians, you know, there's a lot of like bad stand-up comedians, but there's also like a lot of just like really young ones who are honing their craft. And so I think like also dogs like naturally lent themselves to comedy and humor in general. That was like the one thing that I came in when it was like day one. I was like, you know what? All of these like pet brands out there, they've got like the perfect little golden retriever on their webpage, and their social media is just like, oh, look how cute this dog is. But I'm like, I freaking love dogs and I love animals, but they are disgusting, crazy little maniacs. And like the best part of them is like they're so funny, and they like add this like levity to life. And nothing in the other, like none of the other brands that I saw out there like did that. And so from the beginning, I was like, we are going to be funny. We are going to tell jokes. I'm not a great comedian, but I love being around funny people. So it was just like, I don't know. It was a little bit like self-serving, because I was like, I want to have fun at work, so let's hire some funny people. But it ended up like working really well. And I think, so in terms of like also sourcing folks, like it wasn't just like comedians like off the street. It would be like I would notice it at the bottom of their resume, and I was like, I'm going to talk to this person. Or I like hired two people from the customer support team. They'd be like the funniest person in the team chat. They'd just be like trying to entertain the company. And I'd be like, there is something special about this person. And, you know, one of them is now one of the most senior copywriters at the company. And another one is this woman, Alexis, who now is like a super TikTok star. Another comedian is this guy, Jonathan Graziano. He and his dog, the late Noodle, they I don't know if you've seen the like Bones or No Bones bit on TikTok. He was on the Today Show. Anyway, it was like this huge moment on TikTok, and now he's like a New York Times bestselling kids author. But it all like they were all like coming into the Bark ecosystem because they had been doing comedy.
Good eye for talent identification there. Here's another lesson. You don't need a Super Bowl ad to make a huge impact on social media around the Super Bowl. So tell us how you've done that around the Super Bowl. Obviously, there's so many marketers who kind of feel sidelined now. We don't have a budget for Super Bowl, but there's also been some super creative stuff from big brands. So how have you leveraged that?
Well, I think like it all started like when Oreo did the tweet. Like there was like a New York Times roundup where it was like the 26 most influential tweets of all time, and the Oreo tweet was in there. It was like the tweet that launched a million ad budgets.
You can dunk in the dark, right? Was that?
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So that definitely, I think that was like 2014, and then right after that, like that's when we started doing stuff. So every year during the Super Bowl, like we're always doing some stunt related to dogs in the big game. And I think like internally it might have felt like kind of frenetic, like what is our like content mission? What is the thing that we constantly go back to? And we never really like explicitly said this in our like brand decks and all that, but like Bark's content mission has always been dogs are the freaking best thing that we have as humans. And so it always is coming back to that. And so the Super Bowl stuff was no different. And it just so happened like that we hit a couple nerves with stuff. We made some videos of dogs who looked like Peyton Manning. One of those ended up on like Seth Meyers' like Late Show, like one of the pictures that we like photoshopped. We made another one year of like dogs who look like Tom Brady. That one worked really well. So when people have like quarterbacks that they love to hate, that was a good era. But another year there were no dogs in all the commercials, and we were like, what the heck? Like this is crap. So we were like, where are all the dogs? So we spent the whole Super Bowl photoshopping dogs into all the commercials, and then Adweek picked that up. So it's always like a very natural thing. Like some years we would like over plan it and like over Photoshop things beforehand, but for the most part, it's all about like just being in the moment, reacting to things, engaging with other brands on Twitter, and you never know what's going to happen.
And let's talk about a time. So that's, kind of playing off of the Super Bowl. But let's talk about a time when you created your own attention and interest in virality. You said contests can hit it big with an audience, even if or especially if they are weird and off-putting. So how did you do that?
Yeah. So in general, I don't like contests, and like anybody who's worked with me and they propose a contest, I'll be like, I freaking hate contests, guys. Like they're so annoying. But
well, tell us why. Why do you hate contests?
I think like when people do them a lot of times, they're like, we're going to do a giveaway and then we're going to say like, you have to follow us to, win this giveaway. And it's just like, that's not. So then you have a bunch of followers who are just like following you because they wanted a free thing instead of following you because they're interested in the content that you have to put out in the world. So then it's like a fair weather follower, and like, what is the value of that kind of person? But we've done a few contests, and trust me, we've also done some like dud contests like that. I'm not trying to act like I'm on some like high hill of any kind. Like we are just as thirsty and desperate marketers as the rest of everyone. But the few times where I've been like, you know what, that was a good thing. One contest was this last fall for National Dog Day. We've always been like, we've got to own National Dog Day. Like that is our thing, like loving on dogs and like proclaiming that they deserve a holiday, and a made up holiday, but like still it's a good holiday. We did this thing where we said, we'll pay for 100 people to get tattoos of their dogs. And I remember proposing that to both my husband, and like I was telling my mom what I was working on one day, and she was like, that is not nice. And I was like, no, Mom, like you don't understand. Like people love, like our people, they love tattoos of dogs. Like we'd written like tons of Bark Post articles over the years, and they were like super crazy, like traffic generators. We'd like share memes of like tattoos of dogs and stuff, and they always like got really good engagement. And I was like, no, I think this is like something special. So then we launched the contest, like Bark wants to pay for 100 people to get tattoos of their dog, and the PR was what like exploded. It was on 750. We got 750 pieces of press with it. And a lot of that was all of these like little local news stations picking it up. And like some of them were like making fun of us, and some of them were like, this is amazing. Like, I have it. Look at my tattoo of my dog.
The newscaster, there's a chest tattoo in the middle of the 10 o'clock news.
Yeah. And so I was like, that it got a reaction out of people, and like the people who aren't as into dogs, they're like, that is a weird thing. But the people who are like, yeah, rock on, we're like, yep, those are our people. So that was a good contest.
Well, that begs the question, Stacy. I said you sent over your headshot and it's got your dog in it. Do you have a dog tattoo? Tattoo of your dog?
Not yet, but I do. I've been like mocking one up.
Potentially, you'll become your ideal customer there.
Yeah. Well, you can see from my like mom's reaction of like, that's not good. Like, my parents are like, if you get a tattoo, then we're disowning you. I'm like, I'm 34 years old. Come on.
Well, so if I can kind of say it back to you, it sounds like, yes, you had that idea for the contest, but it didn't start there. You noticed a trend within your content. You were creating a content theme that was really resonating with your audience. And then you're like, hey, how can we double down on this and go deeper? That sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah. I think that's like a thread of like all of the successes. I think like what's also like fun about being in content and about being in like social media content, you are constantly putting out content and like getting a gauge on like what people's reactions are. And so I think like a super important thing when you're in content marketing is like watching those reactions and like building that like gut reaction over, for me, like a decade. But it like just producing the content is like one thing, but then like really digging into like the things that like really hit or really fail, like that helps you like develop your future ideas of like things that could potentially resonate and like things that could be like quirky and help you like, launch a contest or an event or something in like an area where no one else is, because you have that like deep long-term understanding of like what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, what I found too is it's not just the metrics, it's also talking to the customers or looking at their comments or writing with them and understanding what about it either resonated or didn't resonate, and in their own words, because sometimes it's not the thing that you think it is,
Yeah.
When you and boy, getting sometimes the way they use those words, that's just golden.
Yep, exactly. So
in the first half of the podcast, we talk about some lessons from the things you made, and you've made some very interesting things. In the second half of the podcast, we talk about lessons from people you collaborated with, right? So what we do as marketers, we make things, we make them with people, and you have had some very interesting collaborations. So let's talk about the first one here. The lesson you said is react to something that happens online and use it to explode a moment. And you learned it from, you mentioned her previously, but you learned it from Alexis Nelson, who is now a TikTok star and soon to be author. So how did you learn this lesson from Alexis?
Yeah, so Alexis was one of those people who was on the customer support team. And I originally saw her, I would see her in like the team chats, and she was very funny. Like, she had like very loud, funny ways of phrasing things. And I was like, this woman is very interesting and very funny. But then one time she came up to me at like one of the company parties and she was like, I want to be on your team. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, then we started working together. But I bring up the customer support because the first time we had one of these like huge reactionary things, my team, like, we're the content creators. We're always like engaging with comments from customers. Like, the thing at Bark, like, you have to be obsessed with our customer, both the dog and for us, like the human. The thing that happened was we had this ad, and it was a pig in a blanket toy, and we didn't think anything of it. It was a Thanksgiving box. There was nothing on it, but the way the ad looked and the way the toy looked actually resembled a very infamous sex toy. And I don't know, am I allowed to say the name of the sex? It's not a bad word. It's just
go for it. Apple iTunes has a little button explicit. I already have to click that button from what you said before. So at this point, you have free reign.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. No worries. We're all adults here.
Yeah, and kids shouldn't be listening to this anyway. So the toy looks like the sex toy is called a fleshlight, and we didn't know that. And like, people started commenting on it. But what made it worse was the ad that we did. We had 3 sizes of the toy, and it was like, for your dog, like small, medium, large. And we're like, now looking back, we're like, oh my gosh, what? Okay. But we noticed that like people started like, that's not a dog toy, that's a fleshlight. And we're like, whoa. So like the customer support team flagged our team and they're like, we should start hiding these comments. And I'm like, first off, I hate it when we hide comments. Just respond, like be a human, like say I'm sorry. Like it's better to like show people that like you actually respond to the negative and how you respond to the negative than. But anyway, so the people started like commenting that. And so instead of like shutting it down, like someone would be like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, that's not a dog toy. And we'd start replying funny stuff like, did nobody think about this design? And we would reply like, oh, we did. We thought long and hard about it. Or like someone would be like, cute idea, but not suitable for my girl. And we're like, okay, well, that wasn't the roast that we were expecting, but okay. So just like us, self-deprecating ourselves or like, falling on the sword a little bit and also like making fun of ourselves, that like really took off. So we like did a bunch of responses to all these folks. And then the next morning we woke up and the ad had exploded. It was like, I need to look up at the stats, but it was like tens of thousands of people had been commenting and liking the ad. And like the ad was no longer just like selling bark boxes. It was like ripping on bark box and we were like ripping ourselves back. And that day, so the next morning I like, this was before the pandemic. I was like, I'm not coming into work today. I got to like figure out how to turn this into a promo. So I worked with the growth team and the dev team and we like spun it up to be like a little gift with purchase to get this like special saucy toy. We compiled all of the funny comments that were getting a ton of engagement. We wrote an article that got like 100,000 visits in 24 hours. And then the press pickup started. And I was like, oh, this is how you do it. So like getting that moment, reacting to it, figuring out how to package it, turning it into like a business story. And then, the media was like naturally picking it up. So then we started pitching it too. And we ended up getting a ton of coverage on that. And that was just like a total accident and something that like maybe another company would have shut down. But instead we're like, no, we messed up and now we're going to own it.
I wonder if you can share maybe the process you have in place or like what you personally do to monitor things, because this can be scary. What you're talking about can be scary. And so
it totally can be scary. And I think like at a different company with like different bosses, like the owners of Bark, it's always been like, we got to be kind of rock and roll. And that's like one of the things that's kept me at this company for so long is like, they're very cavalier and there's like a long leash with like what we can say. And like, they also value humor. But I think like one, like the way that you can like mess it up, like a response like that is by not being honest, not being humble, not saying I'm sorry, or like being just like mean. But if you're like mean to yourself, everybody think that's funny. And then like a brand personified being mean to itself, like people love that. So I think it's like part in that, and also like always thinking from the customer's perspective, always thinking from the person that you're like writing a comment back to, like how will this make them feel, and just being like as human as possible, then like things can go well. But you definitely have to like throw your ego out the door and just be think about like I was answering phone calls as a customer support person, and so was Alexis, and so was another woman on our team. So like I think that background helped us like make sure that this kind of thing goes well and not a huge flop.
Well, I appreciate your all-in attitude, but I wonder, like from a business perspective, if there's anything you can share about your process. I'll give you an example for a second, right? So I interviewed Aaron North. He's the CMO and commercial owner at Mint Mobile. And he talked about, for example, like when they launch a campaign, he is personally, and some of his team are on Reddit because they're looking at like how people respond on Reddit. And he also talked about, he used the term fastertizing because they try to do that same thing, right? Hop on things. And he talked about Dave Foley, the actor, tweeting that he wanted to be in a Mint Mobile ad. And within 24 hours, they'd edited and produced and they're airing a Mint Mobile ad with Dave Foley because they had that right process in place. So you started employee number 3. I understand in a small startup like that, I mean, you're almost doing anything to get attention, right? Now you move to being a public company, the scrutiny, the spotlight is hotter, right? You're reporting also to analysts, to all of these things. So have you had to, like, going from employee number 3 to going to this public company, have you had to set up processes, safeguards, those right type of things in place for this broad team you have to respond to this in the right way? Because you clearly have a knack for it yourself, but for the bigger team, like, you can hit the wrong tone, and boy, that can go south real quick, right?
Yeah, I would say, like, since we've been public, the thing is, like, I've always been, like, the one in the weeds with people. So, like, it's kind of like like what you were saying to the person you were talking to before, like, they're in Reddit, like, looking at stuff. Like, I think with this kind of thing, like, you can't lead from being, like, as a leader, you can't be like the person just, like, conducting from up high. Like, you need to be in the trenches with people, and, like, like, I'm responding to comments myself. Like, the only thing that I'm not doing as many comments as everybody else, because everybody else on the team is much funnier than me. So, like, it would be like, we'd have little war rooms where, like, we're in, like, a Google, like, hangout for the entire day when one of these things would happen. And we're all, like, riffing and stuff. And I'll be like, no, we can't say that kind of thing. Or, like, yeah. So I think the process is, like, you have the most senior person, like, in it as well. But I think, like, Bark is interesting because, like, our most successful product that we've ever sold is a collection of 420 toys. So, like, and that was, like, we took the pig butt moment, and we like added a process to it where, like, the ads and the email, like, my team was helping, like, we actually wrote the email, we, like, consulted on the design, because we're like, this kind of thing, like, it needs, like, our input on it. And so anytime, like, the larger company is doing something kind of controversial, then, like, we would be involved in, like, how it is presented, and you make sure that, like, we call them the happy team, the Bark Happy team, which is, like, our customer support team. Like, we give them, like, big briefs on things, and then we say, like, if you see something where you don't know how to respond, like, that's when we get, like, me and, like, other senior folks involved to, like, construct the responses to that kind of stuff. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Very hands-on lead from the front. I think that's a lesson. Everyone, I mean, if a marketing leader isn't traditionally, I mean, everybody wants to get this kind of real-time marketing approach, but I will say in my career, when I started my career, I was writing print ads, and you get a print ad in the Wall Street Journal. That's a great thing, right? But the timeline on that is so different than a timeline on something real time. And I think as marketers, we've had to adapt to this. It went from the pub needs it a week before, or whatever it is. We're planning this campaign, months before, to instant, right?
Yeah.
Instant. It's hitting. It's now. And how do we react? And I think from what we can learn from what marketers can learn a lot, and I know this is a bit of your background too, is from PR folks, because PR folks had to do this before. My last interview, we talked about crisis communications. And crisis communications, they've always been that. It hasn't been like you didn't have this luxury of, we've got this big 6-month, campaign planned out. It was, something happened and we better react now.
Yep.
So those are great lessons. Great lesson too. Just you roll your sleeves up, you get in there, you're involved, and you're kind of leading the team from the front and letting them know to set the right tone. And the other lesson too, which, because I've seen this sometimes not happen, is prepping that customer service team or prepping the people on the front line. Hey, we're launching this. There might be these types of reactions. Here are some of the types of things you should say. If you're lost, it's not all on you. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
So I think those are some great lessons.
Yeah. No, the customer support team is the one that we, like, work with a ton on day-to-day basis. But then we also, we, like, source people from that team to, like, join our team. So it's very, very, very collaborative.
Well, I like the way you're using it, because I've written about this before too. Like, customer service sometimes is seen as just a cost, a sunk cost and expense center. But, like, that's one-to-one marketing. Like, my gosh, when you make, I think we should all have learned this from Zappos, right? If you make someone's day better, in customer service, like, that is one-to-one marketing. That is a touch point of value that improves your relationship with a customer and can go viral. And the other thing is too, that's business intelligence. I mean, if you're getting to directly interact with customers, and so one of the things I'll tell you, I'll get on my soapbox real quick and then we'll move on to your next story. But one of the things that drives me the most crazy is the do not reply email. And I've written about this before, right? The company sends it out. You reply, you can't reply. Maybe you can go to some convoluted website where you can like put in a ticket number or something. And what a way to say, like, we want to get our message to you, but we don't give a crap what you have to say. Right. I mean, email is a two-way it's a two-way medium. It's a two-way communication. And so I think a lot of that to me is that legacy of like, oh, we are a brand and we can publish an ad in the newspaper or on TV, and you as customers can't talk back or say anything, so we don't have to worry about it. But my gosh, has that changed? When you're leveraging social, when you're leveraging email, these are meant to be two-way communication tools. Well, and it sounds like you're leveraging them that way.
Yeah. And like, I can't take credit for like our like when you look at, when we ever do like the brand analysis stuff with like agencies and stuff, like one of the top things that people say that they love about Bark is the customer support. Like that's one of the things that you'll see like comment after comment. And I can't take any credit for that. But I do think like it is a two-way conversation at Bark. It is like, hey, how's it going? Like, tell me about your dog. And I think that also is something very special that we have that I love so much about the company is like, people always want to tell you about their dog. They can like come in and be like super mad that their bark box wasn't delivered on time or anything. But then you're like, tell me about Obi. And, people end up like sharing pictures. We actually have like artists on the customer support team where their whole job is to just send out portraits to people, whether it's like a dog that passed away or like something special that someone, or just to like surprise and delight. So that two-way convo with the customer is super, super important, especially when you're like centered on a passion point like dogs, like Bark is.
Well, let me challenge that real quick, because I'm worried people are going to listen there and say, well, like, I don't have a fun brand about dogs. Like, I can't do that. Like, I'll just say personally, this happened a few days ago. I had to interact with Moen customer service, for my sink faucet or whatever. And tell me about your sink, which is leaking, is just as powerful of a conversation as tell me about your dog, especially when they actually help you and send you the part you need and all these things. So I think really, obviously dogs people are passionate about, but I think any brand in any industry can do that. It's something we try to do with marketing content. Like if someone, we send emails, or you can email back to us. We monitor social media. If someone has a question, we try to answer the question to help them as much as we reasonably can. Yeah. But it's not this just corporate back of like fill out a ticket and there's this and then there's this excuse why I can't hear back. Or the worst thing, it just bounces. And this is an unmonitored email inbox. Yeah. That is the biggest middle finger to a customer I've ever seen, All right, I'll get off that soapbox, and I want to talk about growth, because that's something you are hugely a part of. That's something that's like, the buzzword for marketing in this decade. And you've learned if you aren't hitting huge moments of growth, rethink the metrics you're targeting so that you can make an impact. And you learned this from Rob Schultz, who's the co-founder of Row and was the former Bark head of growth marketing. So how'd you learn this from Rob?
Yeah, I think when I started working with Rob, I was like, my main KPIs were like get traffic to the website, get video views on the content that you're making. And then eventually it was like sell advertising partners content and get views on that. So that was like in the early 2010s. And then Rob was actually like the fifth employee or something. So we were working together a long time, but he kind of like opened my mind to like larger elements of marketing, and whether it was like from a marketing email or growing the social followers, like, or just like, back then we didn't have like a whole suite of like designers and creative directors and stuff like that. Like the social ads were like made by us and like, unfortunately, sometimes photoshopped by me. So working directly with Rob, like, if something wasn't working, like you don't just like plug along and like try to hone that like open rate of the email, like up it by like 2%. No, we needed to like up it, but we needed to like grow the email list by like 20,000, not like 1,000. And we needed to grow the social by millions, not like, 100 a day. And, so it was more like, don't report the like, we have increased by 77%. It's like, yeah, well, you increased from like 14 to like 19. Like that stuff doesn't matter. And I think Rob is like a really playful person who would just be like, let's study this Instagram algorithm. Let's get on back then it was like the popular page, and forget about like, you got this much engagement out of the followers. Like we need to be like really growth hacking this. And so I think like that applied to a lot of different elements in marketing, and like, because he was the head of growth, like it opened a lot of things, and I got involved in a lot of things where I was like, oh, this game of like getting traffic, exploding things can apply to almost every vertical of marketing.
Another lesson that goes along with that I've heard, and it sounds like from what you've said, you've kind of lived this, is make big bets, right? Make big bets. Like this is either going to succeed spectacularly or blow up in our face. I mean, was that kind of your approach when you're not looking for incremental growth?
Yeah. And trust me, I mean, I can give you a long list of things that have blown up in my face. And again, they hired a 24-year-old to like start this stuff. Yeah. But like, you have to, like, you can't, otherwise, like, we wouldn't be here. Like, I wouldn't have been like standing on the stage of like an IPO. Like, I still am like, how does like an English major like get to be standing on like, you know, the stock exchange. But yeah, it definitely was like luck and like a few people who like showed that like quit messing with the piddly stuff and take a bigger swing.
Well, I think that's a great lesson for everyone listening, because the piddly stuff is the easy stuff to focus on. I heard this great thing from Seth Godin. He's like, you know, and I felt this because I've lived this sometimes. He's like, if you just go home from work of the day or whatever, and you've gone through and you've gotten everything out of your inbox and you've checked your checklist and, you know, your database all set up and your automation set and blah, blah, blah. He's like, you didn't do anything. He's like, you know, create something new and beautiful in the world in your day. I mean, that's what we should be doing as marketers. And yeah, I mean, I think so. That goes along exactly with what you're saying. Don't just be incremental. And also, I mean, hopefully it's reassuring for everyone to hear that's listening is, things can blow up in your face when you do that. But hopefully net, in the end, it'll all work out where you'll learn from it and you'll grow. It's
definitely scary. Like, it's definitely like scary to like be like, I want to produce a rap. And they're like, okay. Like you know, unless you have like consistent wins, like someone's not going to like trust you to like accept your next proposal. And so, yeah, there's definitely like always that like fear in your mind, but you kind of, the little pep talk, you got to like shoot your shot. And
yeah.
So
exactly. So let's talk about, here's another lesson, very timely. Use artificial intelligence in your marketing budget to make your customers' lives more fun and interesting. And you learned this from Heinrich Werdelin. Maybe I messed that up. You can pronounce that, correct if I didn't. But he was the co-founder of Bark, and he is now the founding partner of Prehype. So how'd you learn this from Heinrich?
Yeah, Henrik is my boss for a really long time, and he's one of the most insatiably curious people I know. He is always like looking at the next flashy thing, and you know, I'm not. For a long time, he was calling me Analog Stacy because you know I was like, yeah, he just was like trying to like rev me into like, you should be the ones telling Henrik about this stuff. That never happened. But he taught me like how to dabble and experiment with like a lot of the new emerging tools or platforms. And for the last like 3 years, he's been talking about AI stuff, and I haven't like understood what he would like send me stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. And like, this is just like Henrik, like going on about like the new shiny thing. And, but I think like when ChatGPT came out, I was like, oh, I understand this now. Also like playing with like Midjourney and stuff. And I think like we were talking earlier about like a lot of people are using this for like to be more efficient, you know, to write like cover letters and things like that. Well, one of the first things I did once I figured out what ChatGPT was doing was like, all right, write a love letter to a dog in the style of Shakespeare. And then like it spit it out. I was like, that one's like pretty good. And then I was like, a coworker was like, no, write a letter to a basset hound with cankle stumpers and stinky breath and horrible gas in the style of Bridgerton. Go. And the thing that it spit out was very, very funny. We're like, okay, my mom, if I tried to get her to use ChatGPT, like she'd be like, no way. But if I told her to go to like a Bark Post webpage and like get in this like Mad Lib of your dog and it spits out a love letter for Valentine's Day, then, you know, that's something different. So I think like we haven't launched anything like super public yet with the AI, but like definitely like experimenting with the things like Dolly and Midjourney. And I know like some people on the team were trying to get Dolly to design some dog toys. That stuff was really weird that it spit out, but it does like, these tools are like amazing brainstorm partners. And, you know, even if you don't like totally use the thing that it spit back at you, it does like jog your mind into like a different space. And I think that there's some of the most interesting tools to come out for creativity in the last, I don't know, 5 years.
Yeah, I wonder, and maybe you don't have an answer for this, but like, I wonder if is there a process that you've gone through this, over 10 years now, Instagram came, TikTok, Snapchat, all this stuff, AI, is there a process you use to kind of evaluate things? Because when you talk about AI too, I mean, we've been playing with it as well. Here's something we've done, for example, in the MechLab Superfunnel Research Cohort Live class, we have these live classes. And so, we'd have like a summary of them after, and then we start experimenting with like, well, let's try to use AI to write them, right? And so what I would do, the one thing with ChatGPT is it has a limit in the character count. So you can't just put in the transcript, right? Because it's like 20,000 words for an hour class. And so it would take the chat. So take the chat log of people chatting, on Zoom, and that's maybe 5,000 words. You put it in 2 or 3 times and it writes a blog post. And so we'd start getting this out to our audience. And then the audience kind of started figuring it out. And so in the chat, they'd say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm about to say something really good, and so you should include this. And so it kind of gamified it, right? Because they're all marketers too. And so now the blog post would come out, and then they'd write, hey, like ChatGPT used my thing because I called out to it. You know what I mean? But the process we use from that and the process we try to use from AI, and I think we're a little different. We're a marketing publisher, we're a marketing experimenter, that's our audience is. We're very transparent with the audience. We're saying, hey, here's what we're doing, kind of do it along with us. And so that's why I wonder if you like had any process with technology, because sometimes behind the scenes, like with AI, if you're like pretending it's not there, then it kind of seems to the audience like, why is there this weird response or something like that? Or, or even if you're going on the wrong platform, like why are they on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever it is? So have you learned anything over the years with all, like you said, there's always a shiny object. There's always a shiny object. So have you learned anything to like separate the wheat from the chaff there?
A little bit of it is like pushing for restraint. Like I remember when we first started TikTok, like TikTok is a pretty high effort social platform to be producing content. Like it takes a lot of energy and it takes like a very specific brain to do that kind of thing. But we have like 6 brands at Barker. We have a lot of different business lines, and we have like people who have like a lot of different objectives. And like, one team is like, our business needs its own TikTok. It's like, nope, we are doing one TikTok because we don't have the bandwidth to do 7. So it's a little bit like that. And then, sometimes like the world, it just becomes like overwhelming. Like you need to be like, the world is like screaming at you. Like, I think like ChatGPT and like the images and then like video will be next. Like there's so much coverage about this that like I don't want to like make predictions, but it is going to change like how we do things. So I think like a little bit of it is like restrain yourself when you don't have the resources, and like figure out how to like negotiate with the internal teams to like not do too much. And then also like make sure that you're not like closing yourself off from something when like the world seems to be yelling that it's like going in that direction. But yeah.
Let's one final lesson here. You say move forward and get, we'll say, stuff done. And this is from Carly Strife, the co-founder of Bark and a partner at Ambush Capital. So how did you learn this from Carly?
Yeah, Carly. So Carly was like, she was one of the people I was in the windowless room when we were like 3 people. And she's just like, she's a machine. I have never met anyone like her. She is no nonsense. She like pushes you so hard in a way where like you just want to do right by her. So like you will like figure out how to like do things as fast and like well as she needs. But it'd be things like, hey Carly, like I'm on the phone with this customer. They're having like this problem with this. And she'd be like, I don't know, go ship them something from the post office. It's like, she's very like efficient with her problem solving. And, it started with like little things like that, but it'd also be like, the team structure when we're having to like reorganize from like the Bark Post era to like the era where we're doing more social media and content marketing. She's just like extremely efficient and like cuts the crap from everything and just like helps you like focus on the problem and like find the shortest path to that solution.
Well, I wonder if there's anything for you that through all that growth you've learned to a specific thing to prioritize. And I'll give you one quick example while you're thinking. I interviewed Sherry Lowe. She's a CMO of Exabeam on How I Made It Marketing. And one of her lessons was bad news doesn't get better with age. And so for her, it was always like, no matter what's going on, if there's some bad news, like you get ahead of it, you communicate it right way to the right person. And so going through all that growth, there's got to be a million things calling for your attention. Well, I should mention, as you said, Bark, 6 brands. It's not just BarkBox. You sell in retail, you sell in Target, right? You sell dog toys. So
we have a food business.
So there's got to be a million things screaming for your attention. So there's something for you. It's always like there's a flag that comes up of like, oh, that's the thing I got to prioritize no matter what, among all the cacophony of things that are going on.
Yeah. I think like there are definitely like priorities that come from on high, and then there are like the priorities that you get to choose for yourself. So like we just launched a new food brand, and that is a huge priority within the company. So like we have to like think like it is out resourced for, compared to like, BarkBox is our biggest customer base right now, but like we have to like focus a lot more energy on the food stuff than necessarily BarkBox. So there's like that kind of like prioritization, but then there's also like the prioritization where like I need to make an impact and I need to have like good stuff to say to my boss. And I also need to have like successes and good things to, feel satisfied in your job. And so I think for that kind of stuff, it's like, what is the thing that's going to be most interesting to the customer? What is going to be the most entertaining thing? What is going to be the most helpful thing? What is just going to be the most fun thing? And that has helped me prioritize like a lot of content things when I get to choose like, what is it that we're working on right now? Like, how can we make an impact on the business?
I like that fun as part of your prioritization. That's nice.
No, yeah, very motivated by fun. I did think of one other thing with the AI.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we actually, if you look at our TikTok right now, the most recent TikTok we did was one of the employees, which actually she was like not a comedian, but she was a very funny person. She was a woman. She was a welder before she started working at Bark, and she and her brother launched this like TikTok account in the pandemic. And they're very funny. And I was like, this is a weird person. I like this. And we brought her on, and now she's helped us grow our TikTok by like 200,000 in last year. But anyway, we used ChatGPT. We were like, what are things that you can do to like blow a dog's mind? Like what give me a list of 50 things to make a dog absolutely happiest they can be. And one of the things that ChatGPT came back with was, it was like cover something in peanut butter. And we're like, no, we're going to cover ourselves with peanut butter.
Oh no.
So it was just like a stupid thing, but like that TikTok is like now in like the top, I don't know if it's like top 5 or top 10 of all the TikToks we've ever created. It has like 3.2 million views. So you can use this AI for like weirder things than I think people intended it to be used for.
So we talked about leading from the front. Are you on TikTok covered in peanut butter, or was that a delegation?
I wasn't, only because I was in Philadelphia, but I definitely would have been. Yeah. I mean,
who would pass up an opportunity like that, right?
Yeah. Most people on the team like are like a bunch of weirdos like me, so they're like, yeah, let's do this.
Find some weirdos. Well, Stacey, we talked about so much about what it means to be a marketer, from hopping on the viral moments or handling the crises, hiring comedians, having fun. What are the key qualities of an effective marketer?
I think for me, working in the content space, I like to find people that have examples where they have created content or have done things online. And whether that's like a blog or a TikTok or a Twitter or like, some digest of the stand-up that they've been doing around, Columbus, Ohio. That to me signals that they have a passion about this that is like outside of a job. And I think that when you're in this kind of marketing, like it's not something that you can like turn off. Like your best ideas come in the shower, and you need to love it. A job is a job. Like the things that matter in your life are like your friends and your family and like all of that. But like this job is a little different, and you do need to like find someone who like doesn't shut off at 5 p.m., that they're constantly like thinking about like, what is a funny like lyric I could write for this dog rap? What is a video I could do? I'm reading this story about X, like how do I apply this to my job? So I think the number one thing that I've always found is like have a little bit of an internet trail.
I love that you say that because, I've hired a lot of writers and creatives and, there have been so many where, we get the resume in or we interview them as like kind of a favor to someone like, oh, this is the developer's cousin or something like that. And then like, oh, I'm a writer. It's like, great. What have you written? Show us. And I'm like, well, I have only this little job or that little job. And it's like, I think something different than from when I was coming up is anyone can create now. I mean, there's so many venues, like you said, you can publish a blog post, you can make this, you can do all these things. There's no gatekeepers anymore. And if this is something you're really passionate about, get out there and create. And that's what you've got to show. When I was coming up, building your book or your portfolio, you got internships and you try to get clients. And yeah, you can have spec work, but you really wanted the client work. But now it's like, you can build your own thing and make, like you found a welder on TikTok. Yeah. That's great. I think that's the beautiful thing about the content age we live in.
Yeah, no, it's very fun, and I definitely am glad that in this one, internet has many bad things, but there is a lot of good too.
Absolutely, and there was a lot of good in this conversation. Thank you so much, Stacey. I learned so much from you, and it was fun. To use one of your words, it was fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to everyone for listening. I hope you learned a lot as well.
Thank you for joining us for How I Made It in Marketing with Daniel Burstein. Now that you've gotten inspiration for transforming yourself as a marketer, get some ideas for your next marketing campaign from Marketing Sherpa's extensive library of free case studies at marketingsherpa.com. That's marketingsherpa.com.